Hey guys, welcome back to the range. I know that a lot of you watching this have never seen an AR-15 this small being fired this fast. And no, I'm not trying to brag. What I'm saying is, I know that in many cases, people don't know what they don't know about these guns. Which is why the comment section, anytime I ever take this gun out, goes and I find it interesting that of all the media that I have, the two weapon sets that get the most attention, most comments, are the 7.5-inch variants and the GS17. And anytime those two weapons come out, people just go, hey. And it's because they are unknown quantities. Meaning that many times when you see a 7.5-inch AR-15 or the Glock stock thing being shot, it's almost always in like a mag dump kind of a thing. Ooh, look at the fireball, right? And so people don't understand that these are very valid weapons for self-defense purposes. And I'm the guy years ago who was going to classes and was cleaning everybody's clock with a 7.5. I love 7.5. I kind of moved away from them because the setups that I was running were a little bit too low to the bore line. And so what was happening was my stock, this is actually a really good setup, height-wise. My setups before were very low, and the stock was coming up and it was doing this to my hearing pro. And it was bumping it. And unless you're wearing plugs and muffs, that sound is getting in and it's stealing your hearing, which is why I live with beep. I live with tinnitus all the time. And it's misery. I've learned somewhat to deal with it, but I'd rather not cause any more degradation of my hearing, which is why I have elevated the height of my setups. Across the board, pretty much all my guns have this type of height. My go-to 13.7 is a little bit taller, but this allows you to have enough height, enough standoff. When you pull the trigger, it's not horrendous. The hearing pro is catching that sound for me. This video is about low moment of inertia. What I'm talking about is when you no, there's not enough ammo in there. Well, here, we'll just do this. When you're talking about weight out in front of you, if I've got the weight at the end of my arm and I rotate, see how it does that? But if I have the weight tighter, closer to my body, and I rotate, it's easier for me to manage that weight in rotation. The further out I get it, the harder it is to stop. See the whip? So watch. See that? Where I have to come back? Whereas here, I can rotate and stop. So the same thing rings true when you're talking about an AR-15. If I go from here to here with an AR-15 that's long and heavy, I have a whole lot of over travel. With a 7.5, it's pop, 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 and I can stop the rotation very quickly. And so when you're talking about, there are three types of AR-15 setups. You're talking about your get-home gun, which is something like this. Your bug-out gun, which is, people are kind of half and half on the bug-out gun. They're talking about a mid-weight rifle with maybe a red dot and a magnifier. Then you've got the guys who say, no, it should be a rifle with an LPVO, or in my case, an ACOG. I really like the ACOG because it's like 500 yard capable with just very simple holdovers that are calibrated in the scope. So it's a combination of barrel, ammo, and optic. And I found that those calibrations ring true anywhere from 13.7 all the way out to like 16 and 18 inch. They just sort of behaves about the same with like slight little variations of this much, which doesn't really equate to much in the grand scheme of things. So, so what I find is, well, let me finish the thought. And then you have a home defense gun, which is going to be a red dot, a weapon light, backup sights, if you think it's necessary. A home defense gun, you're talking about within the confines of your home. So even an optic that the battery's gone dead on, you can actually get, like with your weapon light. Your weapon light tells you if you're canted or up or down. And so it tells you roughly, it's like a target designator. You just get a rough sight picture through the optic, even if it's off, and pull the trigger. The RMR is a go-to favorite because it's so small. It runs off of a commonly accessible battery. People complain that it loses its zero when you change the battery. Not that much. I mean, it loses its zero, yes. Not so much that you have to like go out and re-verify, whatever. If you have a 100-yard zero, trust me, you're fine. Get the thing cranked down with the inch pounds, which is like roughly 15 inch pounds, to get the thing cranked down. On the Scholar Works, they actually have specially calibrated screws that lock to the base. And you take a FATS wrench, which is a Firearms torque wrench, fat wrench, FAT. And I've had one of these things for years, and they're wonderful. And you set it to 15 inch pounds, and you just tighten that up exactly where it needs to be, and you stop. And it is beautiful. And you can take this mount off the gun and put it back on the gun, and your zero is going to still be pretty much dead on. So getting back to, guys, there's so much that I want to tell you and share with you about 7.5. I tend to kind of go off subject matter from time to time, but for the purposes of this video, this is a low moment of inertia gun, which is an ideal gun for a get-home gun. And if you really, really wanted to get rugged with it, you would get rid of the 30 rounder. You'd put a 20 rounder in here. You would ditch the weapon light, ditch the optic, take your front sight post, push it all the way out to the edge, and then you'd have this sight radius to work with, which is a really decent, this is the same sight radius that you would have on like a Mark 18. So think about that. You end up with a gun that's very light. As you see it here with the Tier 1 Citizen 2-point sling, you're talking about 5 pounds, 15 ounces, so just a fuzz under 6 pounds. Fits into a bag, sits on the floorboard behind your driver's seat, covered up with a towel or blanket or whatever. If you need to, yes, you can discharge this from a vehicle. I've done it. Oh, dear Lord. It's a whole new level of loud. I would say, get it out of the vehicle before you start discharging it. But the fact of the matter is, a get-home gun is not a fighting gun, it's a carrying gun. It has to be a carrying gun capable of enough accuracy to get the job done, and that's what a gun like this does. The low moment of inertia is like the icing on the cake, because this gun is really, really fast. This gun in 300 black with a can on the end for CQB, boy! And by the way, guys, there's a trend that I'm beginning to see, which is really nice. Suppressors, I've only seen a couple so far, and I'm hoping this becomes more of a trend. Suppressors made of aluminum rather than Inconel or stainless or titanium or whatever. And here's why. Many, many years ago, I did an article. It was actually a ghostwritten article, so I can't tell you the name I did it under. But I wrote an article by contract. Guys, this is more common than you think it is. So I wrote an article by contract for somebody else under an assumed name, a nom de plume is how it's known. And I did all the research for it, and it was really cool because I got a chance to research specifically suppressor technology, and I had this great, very long conversation with this guy who was then working for Gemtech. He's probably somewhere else now. And he is a fluid dynamicist that came over from the Navy. Right? And so he was basically saying, people get suppressors wrong. He says, when you're working with a can, you have to think of the energy that's moving through the can like plasma. It's liquid fire. And it has the same behavior characteristics as a liquid. So when you approach it from the standpoint of you're dealing with a liquid, well, now you have a lot of data out there on how liquid behaves when it comes in contact with a hard object, because that's what the Navy does. Think about the propellers on submarines. They have to have the lowest signature because cavitation is a big problem when you're talking about submarines trying to slip through the water. So this guy's a fluid dynamicist, and he starts just like, he just starts barfing out all this knowledge, and he says the greatest thing that the industry could do is to print suppressors. This is 8 years ago that we had this conversation. Now I'm seeing that technology happening. And I saw it the other day in a video where I was in the kitchen cooking, and I had my Mac going, my AirPods in, and I just had stuff going just in the background. And I went, whoa, what? And they were talking about a printed suppressor. Because now you're talking about taking all of the welds out of the equation. And this guy was basically saying you could do this out of aluminum. You could do this out of any number of lightweight alloys. You could even have suppressors that are made of polymers that are designed, high temperature polymers that are designed to take a lot of abuse for a short period of time. We're not talking about sustained fire on an M249. We're not talking about mag dumps at the range. We're talking about a gun capable of going with a low pressure round like a 300 Black. And it's a shoot and scoot weapon. And the can becomes sacrificial because it doesn't matter. They're inexpensive. They're nothing. They're cheap. And so what this guy was telling me during the interview was, he goes, imagine that a suppressor, instead of being 800, 900, 1,000, becomes 150 bucks, 200 bucks. Yeah, the tax stamp, but we're still working on the NFA. In a perfect world, a suppressor becomes 100 bucks, 200 bucks, 25 bucks. We're talking about suppressors that are so inexpensive to print that the people who are making them are able to sell them for 50 bucks and make coin off of them, because it is still a suppressor, which is a highly wanted item. And so it was the coolest interview, and I mean, just it blew my mind talking with this guy. But I still tend to, and I'll close with this, I still tend to lean toward 5.56 rather than 300 Black for all rifles, because when everything goes in the trash can, you can still find 5.56 and 2.23 in most gun guys' possession. And it's something you can barter with, something you can acquire in barter. Whereas 300 Black, 6.8 millimeter, 6.5, all these different high performance, these rounds that are really good at what they do, but they're not readily accessible, are just going to be that thing that you're not going to be able to get when supply chains are down. And we've all seen what supply chains down looks like now. So keep that in mind when you're talking about your setup. 7.5, guys, I love it. I'm doing a series of videos for you guys. I'm going to dump as much knowledge as I can to these videos. I've been doing 7.5s for years. And this one is a very short, very lightweight version, and I'm still running a 2-point, because that's the other question that people ask. I'm still running a 2-point sling with a shorty like this. Why? Because it makes the most sense. It controls the end of the gun for me. Whereas, and I've been the single point sling guys for years. I'm sorry, I've been the single point sling guy for years. And I'm telling you, as the guy who makes the original Tier 1 Citizen single point bungee sling, I don't use that sling anymore. Across the board, every one of my guns has a 2-point sling on it, because they behave with the same characteristics as the single point because of the bungee, but they have the added benefit of controlling the weapon here, here, or here. And it just sticks and stays put. And there's no slider, there's none of this stuff going on. And when you need to make a long shot, you get in, rotate, push out, get on the gun and take your shot. So that's what I've got for you guys. I thank you so much for your support of this channel, for your donations to tier1citizen.com that keep this channel independent, for your purchases of slings, stickers, and whatnot. God bless you all. Get those guns out in practice. Have a good one.